Okay, thanks. There was a huge amount there. So one of the announcements that the chair didn't make is that both my pamphlets are on sale at the end of the meeting. And if I don't answer your question or your thought, then I guarantee it's in the pamphlet. And it's only £1.50. I'm going to start with one of the last points, which was made to the comrade in the middle there, about the need to be convinced actually that this works. I think it's a very, very important one, and it's one that an environmental movement I think has actually failed to get to grips with in some senses. Actually, the environmental movement is very bad at persuading people that they need to be more environmental. Actually, I think it's the job of the more radical wing, of the socialist element to it, to put that case. And actually, the way we do it is by saying almost everyone else believes that if we're going to live in a sustainable world, it's going to be in some form like this. That actually the people that were mentioned, you know, who live on the waste tips, that actually they're going to live in a world where they're going to have bottled water from Belgium, that they're going to have, you know, cars and TV sets and fridge freezers and the rest of it. And actually, that's not what socialists say. What socialists say is that if we want those people to have a better life, then we're going to build a world which is organised completely different, on the basis of need, not of greed, on the basis of delivering for the hungry and the poor, not for the bankers. And I think that's the way we approach it. And actually, I think people do think there's a logic to planning. I mean, you talk to anybody travelling on a train from London to Manchester, they wish it was planned better. I mean, there is a it gets there eventually, but you know, you're never quite sure. And I think it's very important that we put that bigger picture. Of course, it's also very important that we put the question of the here and now, because there are too many people who stand there and say, under socialism it will be better. You know, we need the revolution and then it'll all be better. And it is a danger for us in terms of environmental movement that we fall into that trap, because actually capitalism is so bad at the environment that it is much easier to say actually under socialism better. But we do have to fight for reforms. It's why at a Marxism a couple of years ago, several comrades had to have their Marxism curtailed so they could go down to the Isle of Wight, live on a campsite outside the Vestas factory, arguing that Vestas shouldn't be closed. But as socialists, what we did is we didn't simply say Vestas should keep this open, that the company opening it, the multinational, should keep this open. We argued for it to be nationalised, because we said if it's nationalised, then actually we can build wind farms that are really needed, not ones that are profitable. We can utilise this faction. I think that sort of sense, we're fighting for reforms in the here and now, but reforms that are about making the world a better place, but also the world shaping the future. And when we win those reforms, that's how it's always true, isn't it? When you win a reform in workplace, when your trade union branch wins, I don't know, better conditions for the cleaning staff, it strengthens all of the movement, and it makes us start to think about what else we can change. This is also true of the environmental movement. Is you talk to people about how destructive air travel is. People go, yeah, that's true actually. I wish they wouldn't expand airport, but how will I go on holiday? Then you have to say to them, you could use the train. It's perfectly possible to go to Italy on the train. People say I don't have long enough holidays, and then you say to them, but that's the problem with capitalism, isn't it? There's loads of unemployed people trying to do work for everything. Why have we only got 2 weeks holiday a year? Let's have 6 weeks holiday a year and give someone else a job and pay them a decent wage. And actually, that's how we start to develop a critique of environmentalism into a critique of capitalism that offers a way forward and a challenge to the system. And again, I'll come back to what sort of system. See, I argue for a democratic planned economy, one where the vast majority of people who are involved in whatever aspect of their lives, in their workplaces, in their universities, in their colleges, and so on, are involved in some way in the decision-making processes that affect their lives and affect the wider economy. And I think this is the problem with the very early contribution about China and Russia. These are not the elements that characterise life in China. People do not go around in Beijing having had an input in the production process, having had an input even in who their elected government is, never mind the decisions that are made about the environment or about the wider world. You see, I think that there's a problem with the portrayal of socialism as being, and socialism's impact upon the environment as being through the lens of what happened in Russia and what's happening in China and so on. I mean, I think Chernobyl is a brilliant example of how bad an economy can be towards the environment. It was an ecological and a human disaster, and actually it wasn't about socialism. It was about trying to compete with the West and catching up. And will nature be seen as a commodity under socialism, the sort of socialism that we in the SWP fight for? You see, I think this is a misnomer again. You see, commodities have always existed in human societies. People have always made things, traded things, given presents of things, bought things, and the rest of it. We shouldn't be frightened of the idea of commodity. But I don't think under socialism, I don't think the vision of socialism I've argued and tried to outline is one where trees are seen as a commodity in the same way. You see, because they haven't been for most of human history. One of the interesting things about when capitalism gets introduced to places in the past is the way they have to break down the notion of commodity, how they introduce the notion of commodities. Read The Myths of Male Dominance by Eleanor Burt Leacock, where she talks about how people had to, they couldn't understand what the Jesuit missionaries were talking about when they said you own this plot of land. They just didn't understand it. It had to be forced upon them. That's what the enclosure movement was about in the 16th and 17th century. It wasn't about simply taking the land off the rural poor. It was about saying now the land is something that's owned by somebody and you don't own it and thus you no longer can live and use it on there. Why are there so many gaming laws in the 1700s? Why did they try and criminalise the hunting of rabbits? It's because they wanted people to learn the lesson that actually nature is not something you can use and enjoy and have for food. It's something that the rich can have. That's what capitalism does. There's a whole number of what they did to the American Indians in terms of the introduction of trading. They invented, they found what the Indians liked, shiny beads and stuff, and they invented an industry about it, not because they wanted to make money out of it, but because they wanted to get the Indians into the understanding of how you trade and use commodities on the market. What do we do if we hit the point? We have hit the point of no return. If we've done it. You see, firstly, I want to say it ain't us. It hasn't been us that have destroyed the planet, because by and large, the vast majority of people through history actually care about the world around them and the environment. And I don't think it's our fault, and I don't think we should even there. But what do we do if society, capitalism, has gone to the point of no return? It's I don't know. I hope I'm not having to, on the hoof, come up with a strategy for the end of the world. But there's two things I would say. The first of which is never underestimate human ingenuity. That's what I'd say. I think there's always hope. There's always hope that we can come up with something. And in a more rationally organised society, in a more planned society, actually, we've got a better chance of dealing with those environmentally crises. But maybe we have gone too far. Maybe we have gone too far. And then actually I'd say that we do this. We always fight to our dying breaths so that ordinary people aren't made to suffer more. I think that's the be-all and end-all. It's a really wonderful bit of Brecht in the Questions for a Worker who reads, even in the last days of Atlantis, the drowning still bawled for their slaves. They sensed that in the last days, as they were dying, they were still trying to make someone else pay for the crisis and stand on the shoulders of the rich. But we're not there yet. There is hope actually for the future. We can do it. If we fight for a different world, if we fight for a planet, a different planet, we can change it. And the final thing I'd want to make is people who are my Facebook friends, and there are a lot of you, you'll notice that I've engaged in a dialogue with George Monbiot recently over nuclear power. George Monbiot, for those who don't know, has flipped very recently into a sudden acceptance of nuclear power as the be-all and end-all. It's the only way we can solve the climate crisis. And I think he's done that because he's given up hope on ordinary people changing the world. He no longer believes that ordinary people can fight even for reforms, never mind for a different, more sustainable way of living. And it's really ironic that he did it, because the month he did it, Egypt went up like a bomb, and Tunisia and all those places. And you see, that's why I have hope for the planet. That's why I have hope for the society future. Not because out of Egypt has come this great ecological manifesto. It hasn't. I mean, nobody in Tahrir Square, as far as I know, has talked about the environment yet. But that's not the point. Because what Egypt represents, and Tunisia and all those other movements, is the move to a better world, a world that's organised differently on the basis of the need, not greed. And at some point in the future, those people, if they start to build that world, will start to question their relationship with the natural world and their ability to change it. Comrades, that we have to do this here and now in Britain. And if people don't raise climate jobs at the right point, then that's not the be-all and end of all of it. The transformation of capitalism to a better world is about fighting for people and planet. So thanks very much.